Welcome, everyone. Today, we are super excited to have Jenna Mazzillo, who is a BCBA and the owner of the ABA Naturally on Instagram and TikTok and all over social media. Welcome, Jenna.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I've been following you, I think, for a while, like since your page was probably like a couple thousand people, and I've watched you grow, and it's been like really incredible to see the growth. And I think the part that I really appreciate so much is that when I had kids, your kids' ages, I was looking for this kind of thing that would help me with parenting. And I only became a BCBA after my youngest was maybe 3 or 4.
Right.
And I didn't have the benefit of having all these tools. And so, one, I love that you use those tools with your kids. And then when I started How to ABA, I was torn between like, do I focus on, the parenting side of it, like what you're doing, or go to the professionals? And so we chose to focus on professionals, but I
Right.
love that you're covering that side of like ABA is for everyone. It is for
Mhm.
kids and families. And it really is that like, missing piece that so many of us need to know. So that's my intro. Welcome. For anyone that
Thank
doesn't know
you.
you yet, if you could just tell us a little bit about you and your page.
Sure. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So my name's Jenna Mazzillo, as you said. I used to be a district behavior analyst. Sorry, I'm sure, do you want me to go into like my history or just like me now?
I think a little bit of background is helpful, like that you
Okay.
are a SpecEd teacher. I didn't say that, so
Sure.
you should.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So,
Okay, start over again.
okay. So I've been in the field for about 13 years, and I started my career as actually an early intervention provider. I was a SEIT. And I don't know if your listeners know what that is, but like when you go into people's homes and you work one-on-one, and I kind of felt like there was a piece missing, like the of camaraderie, like there weren't other adults around me. And so I decided I wanted to be a teacher in a public school. So I got a job in a public school. And at the time, the principal was like, "Oh, you're going to receive training from somebody." And I was like, "Oh, but I know how to do, I know how to do ABA. Like, I don't need any training from anybody." Mind you, I'd been in the field for like 1 year and I didn't know what I was doing. Um, and then I found out we had a district behavior analyst who came to my class, and also at the time, the Carbone Clinic consulted in our school. So that was really helpful for me to get that hands-on training for many years because I really didn't, if you just do what works as a teacher because you don't have these tools and you see like when you do this, it gets your kids to stop a behavior, but then it happens again 5 minutes later. So I was pulled out of the classroom from that school to be the district behavior analyst. And then in the next school I went to when I was looking to move to the suburbs, I started an ABA program in the district. Paul was pulled out to be the district behavior analyst, and um, that was the time I really started learning how to work with neurotypical kids as well, because I feel like that's a whole different ballgame than what we're taught. I mean, and that really sparked my interest. It created a whole new path for me that this was something that I was really interested in as well because it benefits everybody, behavior analysis. So anyway, now then another school district that's a really great district was looking to start an ABA program, and I was looking to come back to the classroom. And when you get a job in this district, like you take the job and you stay here forever. So I took it and I haven't looked back. I've been really happy to be back in the classroom. And so during this time I started my Instagram account um, because I was listening to a podcast every day where not anything about ABA, but the man Gary V was like, if you have something you love, share it with the world. So I decided, okay, I'm going to share it. And it's kind of just grown into, I've seen how I first started it for people, professionals like yourselves, but then I started receiving messages from parents, and I was like, I'm going to take this in a totally different, I'm going to include this as well. So I also, I think when I first created my account, I didn't realize the jargon that I was using. Nobody had any idea what I was talking about. I would say how to fade how to fade your man prompt. Like nobody knows what that is. A lot of people don't know what that is. So I've kind of like shifted into using more everyday language. And then I was just getting so many messages every day, and I try to reply to everybody, and I just decided I'm going to make a course because I can't provide, 1 minute of information that you need a lot more of. So that's how my course came to be.
It's
Wow. Okay.
exciting. So tell us, so first of all, tell listeners about your Instagram page if they haven't seen it. It is so cute and it's just so great because like you said, it's not behavioral jargon. It's like, hey, here's what I can do with, in everyday life. Here's what I'm doing with my kids. Look at this. And I think it's fabulous. But tell us a little bit
Thank
about
you.
that first.
Well, it first started when one of my younger children was a baby. When Grace, my youngest daughter, was a baby, I would start by showing how I taught her to speak, like how I used echoics and mans or requests to teach her how to speak. But then as she got older and some more typical toddler behavior started happening, I would set up my camera to like film language stuff. And then like problem behavior might have happened. And I was like, oh, that might be beneficial for somebody. So, to see how I just handled that. So I started showing that as well to show those everyday, interactions in which, a lot of parents message me and they say, I'm talking to my child about their feelings when they're engaged in problem behavior. I try to give them choices, but it's not getting better. And so that's why I wanted to show, it's not just responding to the behavior, but it in my account, I show how it's so important to know why your child's doing something, because for parents, we have so much going on and it feels good for us to turn behavior off in the moment. I see it happen all the time in public. I get ideas all the time. And as
Yeah.
I'm a parent myself too, I'm like, I make mistakes, but I think if parents had the information, the skill set that I have, and people like yourselves had, they would of course use it in their home. Once people have taken my course, they say like, I had no idea that negotiating with my child after I told him to turn the TV off and he yelled, and then I gave him 5 more minutes, made him do that again. I taught him how to negotiate and cry. So it's just been breaking down those everyday things. And then also, and not just problem behavior, but proactive strategies too that you could utilize. So problem behavior doesn't even happen because we could do things so it doesn't get to that point.
Wow. Okay, I have to know because like do you walk around with like a GoPro? Like how do you record every minute of your life? Because you get such real, like authentic moments that
I
you
know.
couldn't have had those little kids reenact it. Like it
No.
feels so authentic.
Well, so yeah, like for example, yesterday I was filming, I wanted to show like a fun way I have my kids clean up sometimes. And I put on like William Tell's Overture, like do 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 do. If I'm rushing, I'm like, all right, guys, let's clean up. And I wanted to show that because it's fun for them. And then I started doing it. I had my camera on because I'm like, I'm going to show people like, oh, this is a fun way to clean up. And then Grace, my youngest daughter, was like, no. And I was like, okay, here we go. So that's how it all happens, like almost like by accident. Like it's like I'm putting my camera on for something else. But then another example, we were at the mall on over the weekend, and I said to my husband, I'm going to show how to transition your child from like a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity. And she transitions like I would say like 95% of the time without problem behavior. The part I show everybody is the part that has problem behavior. So and she didn't want to transition, but I was trying to show how use a preferred activity to leave a preferred activity so there's no problem behavior. And she had some, and it wasn't bad. But what I didn't do and what I wanted parents to see was stop. And, I gave her a choice. And, I gave her, I said, do you want to walk by yourself or do you want me to carry you? And she said, carry you. And she changed her mind, and she'll try to like, make you, like get into that back and forth. And I was like, what she said, I did because that's what she said. Otherwise, we would go back and forth for 10 minutes. And I didn't stop to yell at her either, because that's what turns it off for a lot of parents too. I didn't threaten her that she wasn't going to get ice cream later. And I didn't say we were going to leave the mall because we're not leaving the mall. And we all know I'm not leaving the mall right now. We're having dinner. And I see that happening a lot too. And then I also didn't like whip out all this fun stuff. So I just wanted to show like, just you could just stay calm, state the facts, and we're going to go. So it usually happens naturally.
Hence ABA naturally, which is great. And
Right.
your kids are adorable. Like they're such good sports and they're so cute. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing them. I think the other thing that I loved about when you started the account, like you were saying, you were gearing it towards professionals. And I loved how you're also a classroom teacher. It's a special ed class, right?
Mhm.
Um, and to me, I also love that application of ABA where like there's ABA in the classroom, but you're
Mhm.
running it very naturally. Also the home piece where ABA plays into typical kids. So I'm curious, as a spec ed teacher, what advice would you have for another teacher who's running a classroom like yours? What would you tell them?
I think it's important for teachers to know that ABA doesn't just happen for like 30 minutes of the day, or like, you go sit with with a student and you do one-to-one instruction, and that's the time you do ABA. Utilizing the principles of behavior starts from the moment your kids get off the bus to the moment they leave. How are you transitioning them to the classroom? How are you getting them to do work with you? How are you going to get them to clean up? Like, actually, I would argue that that's more important. All of the stuff that happens in between the teaching, that's going to make you a more effective classroom teacher, and to really analyze every skill, like not the times in your class you might be sounding like a broken record, or no one's listening to you. How can we what can we fix in that moment, and look at why it's happening and make it better.
Yeah,
So,
there's so many more classroom skills than the table work, than the table
oh,
prep, than the worksheets. And I think looking at it, like you said, where what are all of the skills that we need? And it's the transitions, it's waiting, it's
right,
attending, it's
right.
all of those things that ABA can do amazing things with in the classroom.
Yeah. And I think too, like, we work with our students, we'll have like a manding session with them where, like, yeah, we focus on build on increasing the variety of mans and whatnot. And for 30 minutes, but just because we do it in those 30 minutes doesn't mean that when my child, like a student wants their backpack, but doesn't know how to ask for it, I'm not going to teach them in that moment as well. Like we have to teach it all day long.
I think
Totally.
as ABA professionals, we all get caught up in, what's the program? What's the next step? What's our data sheets? I need data on this and everything else. So all of a sudden we get our ABA blinders on, and then ABA
Yes.
happens in a box, or it happens for, like you said, in this corner of the room, and that's it. And then we
Right.
all forget about what our end goal is. And our end goal in ABA needs to be natural and generalization, right?
Yes.
So if we can be thinking about that all the time, and I think that's what your videos do for us, is go, oh, yeah, that's right. I can use it at the mall. Oh, right. When, my kiddo does this, or when I can tell parents that this can happen when this happens, it's great.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
And
it's
you
most of it.
mentioned
Go ahead.
You mentioned that you recognize that you have to, pivot away from all the technical jargon and moving into more, friendly type of practical stuff. Why do you think that's so important? And I find so many BCBAs struggle with it. And I think that I would love to hear, how can we encourage other BCBAs to do the same thing, and why it's so important to do that?
I feel like when people first become a BCBA, like they're so happy and proud, and as they should be. It's not easy, but they might be excited to use that, or they might want to show that they know something, and so they might speak in that technical. I'm not positive, to be honest, but I did it myself. I might, in the beginning, like speak, especially when I was a newer BCBA, I was so happy that I was one, and so I spoke in technical jargon too in the beginning. But
I
then,
read that book. It gives me the right. I read the really thick Cooper Heron and
right,
Hewitt book. It
right.
gives me the right to speak in that for
I
it.
know, but no one's going to do what you want them to do if you can't explain it in another way. And that's part of it. Like, don't like getting people to do what you ask them to do, and especially classroom teachers. If you're a district behavior analyst in a district, which I was, those teachers have no idea what a MAND is, or what, behavioral momentum is, or, an SD. So it's really important that if I want to get them on the same page as me, that I try to get on their level too. And it will benefit you more. And I think too, as a behavior analyst, if you can be more humble, like the people who I find who are most might be unsure of themselves as behavior analysts are the ones who are speaking in all that jargon, and the ones who are a little bit more down to earth and humble with themselves are like, let's just call it this, a, re a request, or so.
Asking for what they want. That's it.
That's it. Yeah. that took me, that took me some time, and working with teachers too. And also is so important, and learning how, just like we build a rapport with our students as a district behavior analyst, it was so important to learn how to build a rapport with the teachers that I was working with too, because I'm coming into a classroom with teachers who are some of them like have been in the teaching for 20 years. And now someone's coming in and they're like telling me what to do. You have to remember that, you're in somebody else's classroom and there's a way to go about working with them and getting them to want to do your suggestions. If you're going to ask them to like have this very elaborate token system, but maybe they have a class of 25 kids, or, like how can you make it, what's the best thing you could do that they'll do, but that's the most effective for the kid as well.
So true. We had a monthly mentorship meeting today and we talked about a lot of that stuff, because it's not only like we talk about pairing ourselves with reinforcement with the kids, but you're right, with teachers, with other professionals, but also with parents. And, if you're talking as a classroom teacher, even if you're talking to a parent and saying, oh, well, I got your child to engage in, manding behavior at a rate of blah, blah. Doesn't even sound like a human being at that point in time, right? It's like, come on, like just get down to the parents level, get down to the teachers level, and speak regular talk.
Yeah, and I think also like letting the parents and teachers know why you're doing something and like what's the purpose of it, and keeping them very in the loop while you do it is so important, because like we might provide a recommendation and then, for example, I've worked with a child before who didn't ask for anything. And we started by teaching, them to just ask with one word right now. And I could have just told the parent that, but also what was more, the parent wasn't thrilled about that to begin with. They were like, I want my child to speak in a longer sentence. And then to let them know why, what's valuable to their child right now, like that they just use one word by themselves instead of engaging in problem behavior, or what's more effortful. If we make that child speak in a full sentence and their go-to right now is to hit you, then what are they going to choose? May I please have, and then don't even get me started on the rote responses that happen. Like, may I please have more up, but may I please have the bubbles, or just let's get them saying bubbles first. And to that point though, I am always trying to listen to what the parents say and take, I hear what you're saying. I know you want him to speak in longer utterances. Let's get one word going, and then maybe we could add like open banana or something else. And, 2 words before that.
I think you're saying that along with our BCBA certification, we need to have interpersonal skills, and those go really far. Even in just how you're explaining things, I notice you're not using words like manned and compliance and all of those things, because like we have to get used to that. And I think it's so important for new BCBAs. What do you find is, the most common challenge that parents have? Even, parents of typical kids, what are they coming to you for that they really struggle with?
I think right now, like one of the things is there's a trend, like there's always different trends that are happening. And I feel like the trend right now is gentle parenting.
Oh gosh,
so,
don't get me started.
Yeah, me too. But so like, for it, maybe people have a history of authoritative parenting. I wasn't raised that way, but people like have told me they were raised this way. And then now the trend is gentle parenting. And I think people feel pressured maybe also by social media to gentle parent, but it's really backfiring in parents are afraid of their kids. Like they're walking on eggshells around them.
And these are typical kids, you're saying. Parents
are
typical general. Yes.
Like a 2-year-old. And I understand like 2-year-olds can be complex, but like you're the parent. Like, and I probably shouldn't even go off right now either. So, but I think that finding the medium for parents, and you should be kind and loving to your kid and always recognize the good things they're doing, because as parents, we're very quick to just pay attention to the stuff that the second they do something wrong. But at the same time, you have to be willing to, you need expectations, you need boundaries, or kids are going to walk all over you. So I think a challenge for parents right now is figuring out like, what's the middle ground to that?
What's a safe boundary that is, I'm allowed to make? And I think, like you said, if we don't set boundaries as parents, not only will our kids not have boundaries with us, they won't know how to set boundaries with other people. And then other people will walk all over them. So, yeah, I mean, we could have a whole podcast on parenting styles for
Yes.
sure. But I'm so glad that you're putting it out there for parents in that you can set boundaries. And I think a lot of people think about the ABA with kids with autism, and it's so strict and it's so firm. And, we have this thing called extinction, and it's like so focused on behavior management. And you're really showing the other side of it, where as a parent, you can really lovingly set boundaries and it's okay. You can manage challenging behavior. I remember a couple of your videos, you're showing how you're ignoring what she's doing. You're not telling her to stop kicking or to stop doing
Right.
what she's doing, but you're attending to her and you're
Right.
helping to change her. And I think having that example is so important for parents, but I think it's so important for our field because
Mhm.
you're really representing, like, ABA is so practical and it's so natural. And as a parent, I say this all the time. If I wouldn't, I would do any of the things I'm suggesting with my own children.
Right.
And you're really able to showcase that. So thank you for
Thank
providing
you.
that to us.
Thank you. I
You
appreciate it.
mentioned that you've got a course now for parents because you had a lot of interest in it. So what's that
Yes.
all about?
So it's a comprehensive introduction for parents for how to apply the principles of behavior in their home. And it starts at the very basics, like what is a behavior? Because a lot of the times people hear behavior and the question I get asked all the time is, how do I get my child to stop hitting? How do I get my child to stop biting? It's always about the behavior. And not and I then explain to parents how, well, let me go into my course first. Anyway, and so what is a behavior? To proactive strategies you could utilize, because I think, like I said before, as parents, like our inclination is just to correct or to point out mistakes. Or the second our kids don't do something, I told you to get dressed. This is the fifth time I said it. But when your kids do get dressed the first time you ask, nobody ever says anything to those ordinary behaviors. And parental attention is so valuable to kids. So my course goes over that and how you use it wisely. If you're always highlighting the things your kids are doing wrong, then that's what's going to increase. So we go into that. I talk about replacement behaviors for kids. So, if you want your child to stop hitting, well, what do you want them to do instead? I talk about, different functions of behavior, teaching parents to identify that we're not going to respond to all hitting the same, just like a doctor doesn't tell everybody that has a headache, you're going to get this pink pill. We have to figure out why it's happening. So if you're doing the same thing over and over again, let's say you're using timeout, you're yelling at your kid, you're threatening them. Well, it might get them to stop in the moment. Something's reinforcing it. It's not, a lot of people, like, I find that parents think that those are punishment, like that's punishment. But when kids are still engaging in problem behavior, something's reinforcing it. So I teach them how to identify that, how to effectively apply a consequence. So it's not when it's the heat of the moment and you're angry and then you say something, then you're not going to do what you said you're going to do. We go over that. Well, it's from the very basics to all the way to the end to how can I effectively apply a consequence if it gets to that point.
Wow. So we'll put all the information about how people can find out more in the show notes here. But I love that you're doing it. And I think that all of us BCBAs should really help showcase what we do in such a positive way. One question that we like to ask everybody who comes on, and like you said, being a newer BCBA when you were in that position, what is some advice that you might give to a newly minted BCBA or even not, someone who's been in the field for a little bit?
I would say to continue having just because you're a BCBA doesn't mean that you should stop learning. I think it's always important to have somebody look at what you're doing sometimes too, that, there's always somebody that's going to know more than you. So like maybe they have another set of eyes and can see something. You don't never stop learning. And to educate yourself, not just on kids with autism or younger learners, but to get experience in the field. And if you become very comfortable with kids with autism and younger learners, which is, I think, what we're known for, maybe that's a sign to step out of your comfort zone and try working with, a different type of learner or a different age. So I would say never stop learning and always be humble enough to take feedback from somebody.
Wow. I love that. Thank you. like I said, we'll have all the information for people to reach out to you or contact you in the show notes. And we really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much, Jenna. It was
Thank
really
you.
awesome to talk to you.
And also for your listeners, if they want to purchase the course, I'll leave a discount code up for 10% off. For the code will be how to ABA.
Oh,
Wow.
awesome.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.